Well, I think this is the first time that I have got the wind vane working more or less properly. So I was having some trouble with positive feedback, and the vane would suddenly spin out to one side and stop and just stay there. And what I did was I disconnected all the linkage, and I noticed that the pendulum was flipping out to one side or the other, so it wasn't balanced correctly. What it should be doing is staying more or less straight in the water, or have very little twisting force required. So that was the problem. So I fixed that by firstly cutting the end of the pendulum to the right shape, so it's got the right amount of lead and trailing edge, and also putting a few washers below one of the hinges just to move the axis back a little bit. And that, when I tried it this morning in the river, the balance was much improved. So hopefully the pendulum now isn't forcing the vane to do anything, which is what was happening before. Now I haven't put the limit stop on the pendulum, so it might twist a bit too far. There might be a little bit too much twist. I need to adjust the thread at the top also, so it's probably oversteering a bit at the moment, but it's basically doing the right thing. Look at this, it's flapping about a bit too much. I will change that limit stop, but we're staying on the right course, and it's managing things. The Hebridean is working. Look at this. I'm putting it through a pretty tough time, actually. It's doing the job. I've been asleep with this on. I've managed to tune it up enough to behave itself. It's taken quite a lot of fiddling about to get it to work, but yeah, look at that. The thing I'm still having trouble with is light winds. It just doesn't, at the moment, it doesn't deal well with light winds, but it's doing great in these with a little bit of wind force on it. It's really doing the job. And that ends in, I put that back on thinking this isn't going to work, but it doesn't care. It's probably not a good idea really, but it doesn't seem to matter. And yeah, it's really working. I haven't touched it for a while, except I changed course a few minutes ago, but that's about it. So what I've generally found is that because of the junk rig, Tammy gets quite a lot of weather helm. So what you need to do is, well, because of the weather helm, if you simply set the course and have that chain in the middle, then what happens is the Hebridean tries to cope with the weather helm by just pushing over to one side really hard, and then it actually doesn't really steer because it's just locked to its limits trying to push against the weather helm. So what you have to do is take out the weather helm using the chain. So you move up into the weather so that on the straight line course, roughly, the Hebridean is roughly centred, and then it can swing backwards and forwards and adjust the course and correct it, even though the tiller isn't central when the Hebridean is central. So you just have to get it right. So often if you set it up and you notice that the Hebridean is spending all its time on one side, and you move along the chain a little bit to get rid of that so that the Hebridean's back in the middle most of the time, and then it works because it's able to steer and adjust the course. So that's how that works. It's yeah, that works out pretty well. Yeah, pretty good. I'm going to climb up there and show you what it's like sitting up there. Right now, one of the disadvantages is to adjust the Hebridean. I have to climb up onto these lockers here, sit here, and I'm right up against the sheets here as well because we're on the support tack. I have to reach past all the sheet system and reach around the back of that, loosen up the wing nuts, and then twist the vane base there, twist the turret, to change the course. And then what I have to do is then look back towards the compass. I'm looking at the compass, twiddling the turret, looking at whatever I'm trying to reach and trying to get it all correct. Possibly moving the chain a little bit to adjust for weather helm. And of course, down here I have to adjust the sheet, then to change the sail trim appropriately as well, because if you're trying to bear off and the sail's too tight, the Hebridean can't pull against the weather helm and nothing happens. So you have to adjust all those things. But I'm doing it sitting here on these lockers. It's the only place I can get to reach the controls. And I'm being buffeted around up here. I'm getting squashed and slapped by the sheets. This is not good. It's not good, and it's a problem. So definitely, if I was tired or sick, I would feel really reluctant to come up here and change course. And that's a bad thing. You know, you might make bad decisions or. Oh, I better watch it. We're just going through the channel here. Fortunately, no ships to be seen. That's the entrance to Zeebrugge. Crossing over. Because of all those reasons, I'm definitely interested in fixing up some kind of remote control for the Hebridean. I think it's going to be quite important. Just climbing up here is pretty hairy. I mean, right now, this is not a huge sea. It's a bit lumpy. I've had one breaker come and actually put I don't know, about 10 gallons of water into the cockpit. So there's, you know, but sitting here right now, I could get a wave breaking on me, and I wouldn't be able to dive for cover. If I did dive anywhere, I'm quite likely to knock the steering off. In fact, climbing down from this spot often knocks the steering off the tiller, which is bad news. You have to be very careful, and that's quite hard to do when right now, boat's being thrown all over the place by the chop. Climbing over here without knocking the chain with your foot is quite an exercise, quite hard work. So it's just all a bit annoying and could be difficult to achieve if tired, cold, in bad weather. It's all very exposed up here. So yeah, that's got to change. It's got to change. I've got to find a way to do it. The worm gear method looks good. Let's look into that. I mean, it's fine for now, but yeah, it can't stay this way. It's a necessary change to the Hebridean. But yeah, it's really great to have it going. I've been using it like non-stop since about 3 o'clock yesterday morning, and it sailed me all the way through Belgium. And well, basically since Dunkirk, it's been continuously sailing me since Dunkirk, and I'm now at Zeebrugge, and I will be going into Vlissingen, or the opposite place, whose name I've forgotten, Brekkers. Anyway. And yeah, so great. It's really good to have it working. Okay, I'm going to pay more attention to the shipping and the situation here, just to make sure I'm alert and not chatting to you guys instead of avoiding shipping. What is that thing? So this is setup number 2. It's gradually evolving. There's not a lot. You might not be able to spot the difference. There's a couple of things. The first thing is that I've moved the counterweight down a lot. Now, John's instructions involve setting the counterweight so that it exactly, well, just returns the vane vertical when it's not connected, obviously with no wind on it. But his instructions also involve adding a bungee to the pendulum, because the pendulum gets a bit of positive feedback when it leaves the centre, to straighten it out. And I had to think about it, and I thought, well, why not just increase the counterweight and control the pendulum that way? It may be wearing on the mechanism, but it seems to have had a good effect. The pendulum is no longer swinging out to the side so much. But the other thing I've done is, you see the crossing lines? They were attached to blocks at the bottom of these pillars here, but they're now attached temporarily. There's a problem you can see here with chafe, which is this is just a tryout at the moment. But they're now attached. Back. They're now attached to the series stroke attachments, so they're they're almost horizontal with the attachment that they have to the trunk of the wind vane. This means they're getting a lot more feedback from the wind vane. The control lines are getting a lot better feedback from the wind vane, and the result is that the wind vane is moving a lot less in order to correct the course. I don't know if it's the correct 2-to-1 ratio as recommended by John, but it's certainly a lot better, and it means the wind vane is not leaving the centre position nearly as much, which means it's not getting positive feedback, and that is reducing the amount of snaking that's been going on. Now, most of the snaking was really bad when downwind, so this is still an upwind course. Tammy already sails pretty well upwind without anything on the tiller, or with just a bungee cable on the tiller, so this isn't a very rigorous test. We'll have to see how that works a bit later on. Bought these little rubber things here, and that has allowed me to move the control lines more at right angles to the tiller, and that's also increased the feedback, and that's also improved things. I'm pretty sure the feedback is greater than John Fleming recommends, but it seems to work better and better the more I have, so I'm just going to see how it goes. So this is a video about problems I'm having balancing getting the Hebridean to work very well. It has worked, and it's done some wonderful things for me, but it just doesn't work consistently, and I'm having a lot of trouble getting it to behave. What I've done at the moment, the music you can hear is a huge concert going on over here on the side of the IJmeer. That will be the background music for this video. So I've just disconnected the linkage. Now this is the linking push rod. So let's just go through this. Normally the vane would be attached to this, and the wind would swing this backwards and forwards. That will push this up and down, and that connects to this push rod. The push rod then goes to another counterweight down there which balances it, and then that connects via this to the pendulum. The pendulum then steers through the water, which swings the entire Hebridean starboard and port. Well, it's on this very tight bungee right now, but anyway, the whole thing twists around its pivot here, and that pulls these cables and that steers the boat. So the problem I'm having at the moment is that the pendulum seems to overwhelm the vane. As you can see, I've put in a whole bunch of washers here, and that's to try and move the axis of rotation of the pendulum forwards. So that the pendulum has less, wants to straighten up more, but it still doesn't seem to help. The pendulum wants to go to one side or the other really strongly, and it usually overwhelms the wind vane. It pushes back through the push rod and pushes the vane over when the vane should be steering the pendulum. Now I'm just letting go the bungee here so that I can drop it into the water, and I can demonstrate. If I put this at the right angle, so the pendulum isn't connected to the push rod at the moment, and as you can see, the Hebridean is out to one side. The pendulum wants to sit over to one side, and if I straighten it, the Hebridean swings into line with the boat, And what I would expect is for it to want to stay there, because the pendulum rudder is supposed to be balanced. But if I let go, it really, really wants to go to one side. And if I twist it the other way, generally likes to go that way. Now it could be that my profile is badly cut in some way that's twisted so that it just doesn't want to be straight. But if I really, really trying to twist, and this is usually overwhelming the vane. It's twisting so much that it pushes the vane over and the wind doesn't have a chance to steer the boat. There, it's really strong. It's really strong. So I've just set up the Hebridean again in this challenging conditions here with the force 5, 6 on the quarter and these short steep waves on the Markmere to see if it would successfully steer this course without having a little difficulty. It's quite a lot of work here. The main thing I would say is that it's an extremely difficult object to handle. Getting it over the rail and into its socket and into position is very difficult, and even with the boat hove to and rolling around quite a lot in these waves, and these aren't huge waves, it was quite a challenge. It really requires both hands. You have to have both hands and quite a lot of strength, and that means how do you maintain 3 points of contact with the boat while attaching it? It's just not on. I also have to clamber over these lockers, which must be high up and exposed on the stern, so it's just not practical to mount or unmount the Hebridean in any kind of difficult conditions. I think it's it's just got to stay on. So that's one thing to consider. I think in calm conditions you can mess around with it. Going into port and out of port, once you're in port, maybe you can get rid of it before you berth. But otherwise, it's going to stay where it is because it just cannot be moved. It's also injurious. I've once again managed to gouge my hand open while handling it because of its sharp corners. I'm going to work on removing as many corners and sharp parts as I can. There's a lot of stainless steel bits sticking out at the moment, and that's got to change. I'm afraid of losing more than just a bit of blood while handling it in these kind of conditions. The vane was extremely difficult to mount. I had to, because of the wind direction, put it on the wrong side while it was facing away from me, and that means reaching far over the stern rail. Once again, dangerous and difficult to do. And adjusting course is also fairly tricky to arrange conditions. So, all in all, I'm not happy with the arrangement at the moment. And it's really not steering okay. As you can see, it's just constantly on one side trying to pull, and it's not correcting the course enough, even with a chain at the highest point. That's the maximum adjustment I have held. I'll try reducing. I'll just let the sheet out, maybe it'll correct, but this is the right amount of sail for these conditions, so let's just let the sheet out of the way. See if that reduces the weather helm enough for the Hebridean to come back into line and correct the course. Okay, now the sheet is right out. Basically, we're nearly depowered, and the Hebridean is failing to correct the course. It's failing to pull tiller hard enough to correct the course. Even at maximum tilt, maximum correction, you just can't do it. It's got to pull that tiller 45 degrees or more to correct the course at this point, and it's designed to only pull the tiller 15 degrees according to John's plans. It's not enough for this boat, not enough. I've got to magnify further somehow the Hebridean's course corrections to make the tiller move a lot further. Just is not able to deal with the situation at all. And as you can see, it's just flopped right over there, and it's not achieving anything. So what I'll do is I'll just take hold of the tiller, push it myself. Put it down to about 45 degrees. That will bring us on course perhaps, and maybe the Hebridean's wind vane will come upright. Of course. There it comes, maybe. No, yes, no. About there. Now we're on course. Now we're on course. This is quite disappointing. So I've just set up the Hebridean with the temporary pendulum that I made in Harlingen, and this is a pendulum made out of piece of plywood, with the edges just beveled to about 45 degrees. And one thing that's very important to note is that it has no cutaway for balance, so it's an unbalanced pendulum. The pintles are in fact, well, what's that, 15mm in front of the leading edge. So this is a pendulum with no balance. I was having terrible trouble with the balance on the previous one. Although it's intended to be a balanced pendulum, it would just spring to one side or the other. It would not. It definitely wasn't neutral. Way far from it. It would exaggerate movements. This has just been on. This has just been going for a few minutes, but it seems to be working pretty well. This is an upwind, of course. The wind's pretty light. We've got about force 3, maybe 2. What's in a second? 2 or 3, not much wind. Everybody seems to be hunting a little bit, like maybe a little too much, but it seems to work. Nicely. It's a real test, but it's certainly not. It's certainly working okay. It's not going completely bananas like it was before I changed the pendulum. So the question is, will it work down the course? Saying, now we've put the stern light on so you can see the Hebridean is steering. We're on the downwind course and the wind force is about 3. And it's doing a really good job. And you may not be able to see the vent. The vane here is pivoting slightly with the wave action. But the servo pendulum, this is a temporary pendulum I made yesterday and this morning out of a plywood plank. And you can see it's got no balancing cutout at all. This is an unbalanced pendulum. And it's doing a fantastically good job. The whole thing is really nice and sensitive. It's snaking ever so slightly, but this boat is actually rocking back and forwards quite a lot, just in the waves. And it's been, we've just been sitting here watching it, and it's doing a bang on. We've got a gust on at the moment. But it's been really holding a very good course. So yeah, it's getting back onto it now. There's a gust there. There we go. So, success with the unbalanced pendulum. I can't really explain it. We've just been discussing it here, and we think maybe so. John Fleming was saying that the Hebridean requires the feedback from the tiller to help stabilise it, and it might be unstable without it. Well, my boat is very light and my tiller moves ever so easily. It's in the dark, can't see it. My tiller moves easily, so maybe it doesn't provide enough feedback to stabilise the system. With this pendulum, the Hebridean, when disconnected on my boat, behaves itself very well, and connecting it to the tiller doesn't seem to have any effect on it. But yeah, this is good. This is good news. Maybe it's all going to work out. about a third of the way across the North Sea, and so far the Hebridean with the modified pendulum is doing a very good job. We've tweaked it a little bit. I've been tweaking it as we go along, mostly tightening things up. I've made a couple of adjustments that John Fleming suggested, and it's working out pretty well. We're on a downwind course, which is traditionally a tricky thing for a wind vane, and although the wind vane does snake a little bit, it's not too bad. We're making a pretty consistent course. I'll show you the compass in a little bit. We've got some fairly big waves. We've had a few groups of really quite large waves, and we're still getting waves, and the North Sea's waves are a little bit confused. They come in all directions, but mostly they're just hitting us on the stern. There's a bit of snaking. We've gone off course a little bit. We'll correct. So I've adjusted the wind vane angle down a little bit, and that's helped to reduce the snaking somewhat. I've adjusted I don't know what you call it, the bracket on the foot a little bit, and that's helped to even things up. I've pulled tight the little string on that little string up there, tightened up a bit to reduce the maximum deflection, and that's helped somewhat. And the other thing we've done as an experiment here is added bungees to the chain here. Now this is we were just having trouble keeping everything tight, and these bungees, although they may be cancelling out a little bit of the small movements of the wind vane, they're helping a lot with transmitting those movements as well by just keeping it fairly tight, and that's working quite well. That's good. Right, so just to have a look at the course. Just watch this. This is just to see the Hebridean. This is the downwind course. You can see it's just snaking a little bit, getting up a little bit. Mostly when the waves come past and surf the boat. Oh, that's gone way off. It's a gust. Got a sudden increase in the wind. Just the sails on the port side. A gust can really deflect you quite a lot. And it's past and recovering course. It's a wave knocking us over. And then we're kind of back on course here. So it's not steering as well as I can, but it's on average doing a reasonably good job. It doesn't get tired, exactly, Martin, that's right. It does not get tired. We can sit here and drink tea and watch it. Yeah, that's good bit of consistent steering there. So mostly it's not compensating for the waves and the surfing that's going on, which is something I do by feel. Let's see if I can demonstrate. I'll just take this Hebridean off and I'll take over. I'm going to try and steer about 240. Right, so then I can feel a wave. Building up on the stern, and there we go. I can, in advance, I know when it's coming. There. So in advance, I can. Oh, overdid it. Yeah. So maybe I'm not any better. Mind you, I'm looking at this camera rather than. This is where I find that I have to pull the tiller a long way to keep get surf going. And although I keep a good course, the boat does heel more. There we go, I'm getting into the groove here. Now if you could see my hand, well I can show you. I'm looking at the compass, but I'm going to show you my hand here on the tiller. And you can see the size of the corrections I need to make in order to keep us on a steady course. I'm keeping us bang on 240. What happens is a wave comes behind and it requires a big deflection to keep the boat steady. I'm still bang on 240. It's tricky, I can't do this and I can't see exactly what I'm filming and count at the same time, but I just want to give you an idea of the size of deflection that's required to compensate for the wave action. But I'm anticipating, I can feel the wave coming and I know when it's coming. Now I don't think the self-steering can do this. I can't anticipate, but also this is why I was talking about making the need to make large corrections. I've got a theory that it might be possible to do this from the heel, because mostly what I need to do is I feel the heel coming, I can feel the boat begin to heel and correct it and correct the course. And this is how I can set up surfing by doing this. Usually when the rudder is pulled to the starboard suddenly, that's when we're reaching the crest of a wave, and if I get it right, we surf along that wave. It's not something I observe the Hebridean doing. Maybe it can't. That's expecting a lot. But we get a surf going, we get really quick. We've got 8.8 knots a couple of days ago from surfing. There. Good example. Right, there we go. So anyway, that's a few minutes of demonstrating what hand steering is like and the amount of tiller that's required to keep the boat on a steady course. I see it's way more than 15 degrees. Yeah, anyway, back to, I'll put the Hebridean back on. Here's some film of the Hebridean working about as well as we've had it working. In fact, as well as I've had it working at all. It's the downwind course on the North Sea. We've had some varying wave heights. There's some slightly tricky wave direction. Here is it in action. This is with the unbalanced pendulum, which is working very well indeed, although it is juddering. Judder. rounding up. Probably could do with losing another panel. I'll give it a go in a second. Whee! So I'm here outside the Deben, and it's a very calm day, very quiet, and we've got a very light wind. Let's have a look. We just sort of, we've got a wind sufficiently light that it's not really picking up the ventimeter. I guess it's a 2. We're just trying out the Hebridean wind vane self-steering system with the modified pendulum in light winds, because one of the things we were concerned about is it going to work with the unbalanced pendulum? And it does. In this light wind, and we're on off the wind course, so there's just the breeze coming across the quarter. It's picked up a little bit. Still not enough to disturb the ventimeter, but there's just a slight breeze. Maybe I can demonstrate by dropping this bucket here. Okay, so well, maybe not. So, but yeah, it's still working and it's still sensitive. You can see it twisting there. It's doing a good job of keeping us on course. So I set up about 15 minutes ago to head us towards this green buoy, and here we are. And here's that's what do you call it? That's a measurement system buoy that's here, doing all sorts of sea measurements. Yeah, so it's still working fine in light wind, so that's good news. At the moment, I don't see any reason to modify it, but I will try it as an experiment. But right now, I've got other things to do, but I will get back to doing that. So good.